Episode 7 Working with Negativity. The summer house was flooded with sunlight. It penetrated the space from panoramic windows that were located on every wall and stretched from floor to ceiling. The glass tent roof seemed weightless. Through it, one could see the ultramarine sky with undisturbed clouds. The spacious hall gradually filled with the hum of students' voices, and when the keeper of the knowledge appeared at the door, the crowd parted with respect and awe, making a path to his chair. He stopped, surveying the audience, and raised his hands in a welcoming gesture. The faces of everyone, past whom the majestic figure of the teacher floated, were illuminated by an inner light. They were so happy to be near, to be included in the field of pure energy. The keeper sat down in the chair prepared for him, and the assistant, a tall, short-haired young man in an orange robe, put a microphone next to him and adjusted it so that even people from the back rows could hear the teacher's words. The upcoming spiritual conversation was dedicated to working with negativity. Those gathered here were united by one thing. They wanted to ask questions and get answers from the sage. Answers that will help them continue to move along the path of knowledge, develop spiritually, and maintain awareness. A slender young woman leaned forward, marked by an unusually bright oriental beauty. Shining black hair cascaded down to her waist. Expressive brown eyes sparkled under thick eyebrows. "Great teacher," she said loudly, and the audience froze to hear her question. "How can we learn to properly maintain the right mood? When I do practices, I often fail to tune in to the higher planes, especially when something distracts me. Negative emotions appear, and I don't even understand it right away. But I realize myself later having succumbed to negativity." The woman fell silent and looked at the keeper of the knowledge with a sincere desire to understand. He answered her with an understanding look, full of unconditional love. "Every negative emotion should serve as a wake-up bell," he explained. "If we feel a negative emotion inside us, we should think something is wrong. Our biological machine thus gives us a signal that it has crashed into some obstacle, so that we can change and correct something. Negativity is a signal for the return of awareness, a sign for us to rethink the situation and understand what thoughts have led us to such states." "Beloved teacher, but how do we not forget about this bell?" the black-haired woman asked, without taking her eyes off the sage. "When you are in the midst of a situation or doing practice and then you get distracted, it can be very difficult to remember about it, and negativity begins to destroy us from the inside." "We must be vigilant and watch ourselves," replied the keeper of the knowledge, "to create an anchor in our consciousness. You should always think, if I am feeling unpleasant emotions, then something is going wrong. I need to stop, realize my feelings, see the reason, and try to fix everything. The more conscious we are, the more attention we direct to ourselves, to how we are arranged, to how everything inside us works, and the better our biological machine begins to function. And then we begin to develop. If we do not control ourselves, and any little thing can cause irritation, anger, depression, anger inside us, this means that our machine is breaking down and collapsing more and more. That is why we see so many old people who are constantly experiencing negative emotions, and they dislike everything. they often talk to themselves, lose the ability to realize and control themselves, and are no longer able to see things for real and develop. That is how it happens if you do not watch your negative reactions. Satisfied with the answer, the black-haired student gratefully stepped back, and immediately several hands flew up. The keeper gestured towards a short, stocky man in a light bandana. "Teacher, please tell me how to work with condemnation," he requested, and immediately, hurriedly, before the sage began to answer, explained, "I often catch myself thinking that I judge other people, but not in order to help them see their shortcomings." He paused, and it could be seen that he was worried. It was obvious that he was uncomfortable and ashamed to expose his true motives for his behavior. But when he looked at the teacher, he saw that he was still looking at him without the slightest condemnation, with love and warmth. Realizing this, the man made an effort and continued, "When I judge other people, I take attention away from myself and switch it to others, and I usually see it later, and even that is not always possible. So that means I want to evaluate myself in the eyes of others and myself, right?" There was silence in the hall. The students listened with respect to that man, who was not afraid to admit his own shortcomings in front of such a large audience. "Alexei, to admit and realize your mistakes and see problems is a very big step forward," said the keeper of the knowledge, touching the student with a benevolent look of full acceptance. "To eradicate this condemnation in yourself, you need to understand where it came from. Remember your childhood. Was there someone from whom you could adopt this pattern of behavior?" The man mused, but after a couple of seconds he exclaimed with sincere surprise, Yes, my parents. They were constantly judging each other. But somehow, I didn't even think that it affected my behavior." "All our illusions about ourselves come from childhood," the teacher reminded. "Such condemnation of others supports the false ego. It feeds our egoism. That is, if someone is bad, then I am good automatically. We need to see it all in ourselves. You can see it now, and this is a sign that you are on the right path." "But teacher, what should I do? How do I resist it if I notice it retrospectively?" "Laugh at yourself," the keeper replied with a smile. "When this happens, you need to exaggerate the situation and find twice as many flaws in yourself as in others." "Thank you, teacher. I'll try to do this," said Alexei, and bowed his head in appreciation and sincere gratitude for the clarification. Meanwhile, a new question was already being asked. The attention of all those present turned to another man, tall with prominent biceps and a dark, thick beard on a young face, which gave him a more mature, solid look. "Beloved Guru," he spoke confidently in a low voice, "when I begin to be more active, more yang energy awakens in me, and I see that this is beginning to feed the selfish part in me. Tell me, how can I separate myself from egoism at such moments?" "You need to watch yourself and make sure that this yang state does not lead to the condemnation of other people, to bragging, to the exposure of your ego," the sage explained calmly. Again, there was not even an ounce of condemnation in his voice. "And here, too, it is necessary to exaggerate, right?" the student asked. "If I notice this happening again?" "That is right," the teacher nodded. "We need to laugh at ourselves right away, so that the negativity does not start coming out of us with the increased yang energy. It so happens that while a person has little energy, his demons are not visible. But as soon as the energy level rises, all the negativity comes out. Envy, anger, resentment, because the inner demons have been fed. And then a person can show everything that he is capable of, that has been put into him by the sick society. Therefore, when our energy rises, self-control must also rise, so that we do not let these devils get out. The keeper fell silent, and a slight hum swept across the hall. The students were talking among themselves, discussing the knowledge they had just received. The sage did not hurry, giving the opportunity to think, to understand and accept it. When several hands flew up again, he gave the floor to a woman in a tight gray suit, who elbowed her way to the front from the far rows. "Master, tell me, how can I work with the fear of evaluation?" she asked, and looked at the sage with a hope of getting not just the knowledge, but a solution to her long-standing problem. At the moments of some important events, a part of me that is very much afraid turns on. I'm afraid that I will be criticized, evaluated, scolded. She paused, remembering her feelings in order to describe them as accurately as possible. This is not only at the level of negative emotions, but also at the level of the body. I start to tremble, I get hot, and I can't do anything about it. I want to close my eyes and run away. Sometimes I can only register it, but I can't get out of this state. What should I do? The keeper listened attentively to the student's story and spoke. Unfortunately, we have been taught since childhood to be afraid of evaluating people. Adults told us, "Oh, what are you doing? This is not what good children do. What will that Mrs. or that Mr. think?" And so, we got used to the fact that if we do something wrong, they will look at us askance, condemn us. Often we speculated that no one thought anything about us. But it seemed to us that someone really thought something about us. They began to worry even more because of this. They were afraid to act boldly, show themselves, do what comes from the heart. It is necessary to see, realize, and try to discard this dependence on the evaluation of people, on their sidelong looks. To do this, it is good to practice the drunk dance often. "Why do you think people say to summon up Dutch courage?" the sage asked, looking around the hall, and pausing his glance at the woman in the gray suit who had asked the question. She looked around in confusion, but when she realized that the teacher was waiting for her answer, she hesitantly assumed, maybe they really feel bolder? Yes, but why, has anyone wondered? The sage turned to the audience, and after waiting a few seconds, began to explain. This is because, at the moment of intoxication, all our restraints go away. The false personality vanishes, the fear of evaluation disappears. We are no longer afraid to do something wrong. We are not afraid of condemnation. So the practice of the drunk dance allows us to enter into such a state consciously, without vodka or other stimulants. We need to imagine that the body is free from mind control, as if we drank a little alcohol. Let the arms and legs hang loose. Make your body as relaxed as possible, and lightness will appear. In this state, complexes and fear of evaluation go away, the false personality disappears, and we disidentify with it. "Thank you, Master. I will definitely do this practice," the woman said, and in her voice there was a sincere desire to start as soon as possible. The sage nodded, accepting the gratitude, and looked at the student as if he knew that she would succeed. He believed in it. Meanwhile, hands were raised again in the room. There were no fewer people willing to ask their questions. "Great teacher, how do you get rid of self-interest in your motives?" another student asked, a red-haired lady in a long blue dress. "I notice for myself that even when I ask God to help in some good cause, in charity, in volunteering, there is always a personal motive. I understand that I will be positively evaluated for this case, and I will show myself well. It turns out that this is some kind of constant trade with God, and so I want to learn selfless service." "Rita, it is very good that you understand this and keep track of that in yourself," the keeper of the knowledge praised the woman. "Yes, it is necessary to notice this part of the personality, which was formed under the influence of society in childhood. Mom gave you candy, stroked your head, praised you when you did something good. Therefore, there was such a need for someone to constantly give a kind of candy or approval. We need to remember how the mechanism was instilled and built into us, and exaggerate. To see it all from the outside, to laugh at ourselves. We have to separate ourselves from this part of the personality. If it works out, we will be independent of it, and then selfish thoughts will go away. Then we will not wait for constant approval of our actions. Here, too, the practice I mentioned will help, the drunk dance or the dance of a madman. Try to act. Imagine yourself as a madman whose movements do not obey his mind. Try to move in this state. This will help to disentangle yourself from a false personality, and then it will be easier to separate from it and help people without waiting for approval." "Beloved teacher, thank you very much," Rita said. "I will definitely continue to work on myself. May I ask you another question?" The keeper of the knowledge nodded his head affirmatively, and then the woman spoke again. "Tell me, how can I learn not to compare myself with others in a team of women? I see in myself that I am constantly looking for patterns and frameworks that I want to adapt to. Does this also come from childhood?" "Yes, it does," the sage confirmed. "A person has been taught to compare himself with others. Look, the neighbor's child is studying well, and you get Fs, so you are bad, and that child is good. And parents made similar comparisons all the time, wanting us to behave the way they needed. And now we still have this template, and we start to compare ourselves with everyone. But we must strive to benefit from it. If we compare ourselves and see that someone is better, then we just need to imitate them. If you are jealous, imitate and become better too." "That is, can it be used for good, for our own improvement?" The woman was amazed. "Exactly. Our comparison of ourselves with others can generate positive emotions and act as a driving force. We see that someone is better than us, and we want to become the same. We need to be happy for the person, not jealous, and be happy for ourselves for having the opportunity to learn from them. You have an example to follow. There is someone to look up to. We need to use this. It would be bad if everyone were worse than us. There would be no one to take an example from, no one to look up to, no one to imitate." Rita's face lit up with understanding. It was clear that the conversation with the teacher had given her a lot. Now everything that had caused negative feelings was gone, that now she knew how to continue working on herself. Many of the students received equally strong impressions, especially those who had already faced similar problems. They listened, absorbed the knowledge, and thought it over. Meanwhile, the keeper of the knowledge pointed in the direction of a tall man who had been raising his hand for a long time, wanting to ask his question. "Great teacher, since we are talking about working with negativity," he began, "please help us to respond correctly to people who are faced with the condemnation of the school. They hear something bad about the school and begin to doubt their personal experience. It seems to them that they were under some kind of influence, hypnosis, indoctrination. How can I direct them to their own experience?" The sage looked at the man with a sad, transparent smile. "These questions are eternal," he seemed to say without words, "and there will always be those who try to blacken those who bear the truth, and so there will always be those who believe them. People should have their I, their thoughts, believe their own experience, track feelings," the keeper said aloud. "After the seminar, they have to take away something for themselves, to come to the realization that I was at the seminar, I felt good, I received such and such impressions, such and such revelations. It helped me in this, and in that. And if someone says the seminars are bad, and he has not even been there, then it turns out that the person is not relying on his personal experience, nor on his opinion, nor on his I." But what is the right way to respond to those who still believe those who are trying to blacken the school on purpose? Everyone has their own opinion. Many men, many minds. If we listen to everyone, then we will depend on external influences. One will say one thing, another will say another, the third will say the opposite. We must listen to our I, try to evaluate for ourselves whether it is right or wrong, good or bad. Each person must comprehend, understand. That is when it will really be our experience, and it will be the right conclusion. It will be right for us. That is the kind of attitude you need to share with people. "Thank you, teacher," the man thanked, but immediately asked again, "But shouldn't people listen to authoritative opinions? Can't one's own thoughts and feelings be mistaken?" "To authoritative ones, yes, they should," the keeper of the knowledge readily explained. "If Christ or Buddha said something, another great teacher, or at least a person who had achieved something, understood something, reached important realizations himself, of course, you need to listen to that. But negative things about the school are said by ignorant people who do not understand anything themselves, do not know anything, and degrade. They have lived this life in mediocrity, and they transmit only some gossip and rumors." Having finished answering the question, the keeper of the knowledge unexpectedly began to read a poem for everyone. He got up from his chair, but did not take the microphone from the stand, instead raising his voice so that his sounds reached the farthest corners of the room. The hall quieted down, enjoying the depth of meanings. "I tore away the former thread and lever that had a force to keep the life of yours. Don't call me acting bad for good and ever, you who keep going the familiar course. As darkness cannot keep from mere shining whatever hid in shadows up to now, so hardly will it do a piece of lining along the wise on foolish what and how. As death will rid your way of sinful being, so life is all as that of freedom shines. We'll come to have a new rebirth at seeing the fading rout of years in bitter wine." We invite you to join spiritual seminars, workshops, and retreats hosted by the Leader Masters. Reveal your superpowers. Find your predestination and accumulate power to gain well-being and bring your goals to life. Send an email saying, "I want to join the seminar" to our mailbox, and we will give you all the information. See you soon.